The marble floors of the Sterling and Associates law firm gleamed under the crystal chandeliers, reflecting the opulence that catered to the city's wealthiest clients. Jessica Starling stood outside the heavy oak doors of Conference Room A, taking a deep breath that had nothing to do with nervousness and everything to do with preparation. Her hand gently rocked the carrier where 1-month-old Emma slept peacefully. Tiny fingers curled against her pink blanket. This was it. The final act of a marriage that had died long before the paperwork acknowledged it. Inside the conference room, Brandon Whitmore checked his platinum watch for the 3rd time. The billionaire CEO of Whitmore Technologies sat with the easy confidence of a man who believed the world bent to his will. His tailored charcoal suit probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, and he wore success like a second skin. But today, that confidence served a different purpose. He wanted Jessica to see exactly what she was losing. Beside him sat Vanessa Kane, a vision in crimson silk that screamed deliberate provocation. Her platinum blonde hair fell in perfect waves, and her smile carried the smug satisfaction of a woman who believed she had one. Brandon had brought her intentionally, a calculated move designed to demonstrate that he had moved on, that Jessica Starling was nothing more than a chapter he had closed. Richard Foster, Jessica's attorney, entered first. The seasoned lawyer's expression gave nothing away as he took his seat, arranging his documents with practiced precision. Brandon's legal team, 3 sharks in expensive suits, barely acknowledged him. Then the door opened again. Jessica entered. Brandon's rehearsed expression of indifference shattered instantly. His eyes widened, his jaw went slack, and for the first time in years, Brandon Whitmore was rendered completely speechless. Jessica looked radiant. Her chestnut hair was pulled back in an elegant twist, and she wore a simple navy dress that somehow made her look more regal than any designer gown could have achieved. But it was not her appearance that stole the air from the room. It was the infant carrier she set carefully on the table beside her. The soft coo of a baby that echoed in the stunned silence. Vanessa's perfectly painted lips parted in shock. Brandon's attorneys exchanged confused glances, and Brandon himself could only stare at the tiny bundle that represented a truth he had never anticipated. Jessica settled into her chair with grace, adjusting Emma's carrier so the baby remained undisturbed. She met Brandon's gaze with calm, steady eyes that held no anger, no pain, just a quiet strength that made him feel suddenly very small. "I apologize for any delay," Jessica said, her voice smooth and professional. "Emma needed to eat before we started. She's only 4 weeks old, and her schedule is quite demanding." Emma. The name landed like a thunderclap in Brandon's mind. 4 weeks old. His mental calculation was immediate and brutal. The divorce petition had been filed 11 months ago. If the baby was 4 weeks old, that meant conception had occurred right around the time he had told Jessica he wanted out, that he had fallen in love with Vanessa, that their marriage had been a mistake from the start. Brandon had spent the past year building a narrative where he was the successful man who had outgrown his starter marriage, where Jessica was the forgotten first wife he had left behind for something better. He had crafted press releases, managed his public image, and paraded Vanessa at every social event to prove he had upgraded his life. But now, sitting across from him was the living, breathing evidence that he had destroyed something far more valuable than he had realized. "Jessica," Brandon finally managed, his voice hoarse. "What is this? Why didn't you tell me?" Jessica's expression did not change. She simply looked at him with those steady hazel eyes, eyes that had once looked at him with love and now held only cool assessment. "Tell you what, Brandon? That I was pregnant?" She paused, letting the weight of the question settle. "I was planning to tell you. In fact, I had made dinner reservations at Marcello's, your favorite restaurant, for the exact evening you came home and informed me that you were in love with Vanessa and wanted a divorce." The words were delivered without venom, without theatrical emotion. Jessica stated facts the way one might report the weather, which somehow made them cut deeper. Vanessa shifted uncomfortably in her seat. This was not how she had imagined this meeting going. She had expected a bitter, desperate woman. Instead, she found herself facing someone who made her feel irrelevant. "You should have told me anyway," Brandon insisted, his business instincts kicking in, trying to regain control of the situation. That's my child. I had a right to know, your child. Jessica's eyebrow arched slightly. When you told me our marriage was a mistake, when you said that loving me had been the wrong choice, what exactly made you think I should burden you with a baby you clearly did not want? You made your priorities very clear, Brandon. Vanessa was your future. I was just an obstacle to remove. Richard Foster cleared his throat. My client is prepared to finalize the divorce today with the terms we have already agreed upon. Mrs. Whitmore is not seeking alimony or any claim to Whitmore Technologies. She has her own career and inheritance. The only matter we need to address is the child. The child is mine, Brandon said immediately, his voice taking on the authoritative tone he used in boardrooms. I want a paternity test. Today? Jessica did not flinch. I expected you would. I have already arranged for testing at Jenna Point Medical. We can go immediately after this meeting. I have nothing to hide, Brandon. Emma is your biological daughter, but biology does not make you a father. The distinction landed hard. Brandon felt the judgment in her words, in the way she held the baby with such natural protection. In the way she had built a life that clearly did not need him. She's mine. I want shared custody, Brandon demanded. I want equal time. I want my name on the birth certificate. Your name is on the birth certificate, Jessica replied calmly. I never intended to hide Emma's paternity. But shared custody is not automatic, Brandon. You walked away from this family before she was even born. You do not get to walk back in and dictate terms. Jessica reached into her bag and pulled out a folder, sliding it across the polished table. These are my terms. The DNA test will be conducted today. When it confirms what we both already know, you will have supervised visitation rights. Once per week, 2 hours, at my residence with a court-appointed guardian present. As Emma grows older, if you prove yourself to be a consistent, loving presence in her life, we can revisit expanded visitation. Brandon's face flushed with anger. That's unacceptable. I'm her father. I have rights. Rights you forfeited when you chose another woman over your family, Jessica said, her voice finally showing a flash of steel. You do not get to have Vanessa and me, Brandon. You do not get to abandon your pregnant wife and then play devoted father when it suits your image. Emma deserves better than a part-time parent who only showed interest after being publicly confronted. She stood, lifting Emma's carrier with practiced ease. The baby stirred but did not wake, her tiny face peaceful in sleep. My attorney will contact yours regarding the test scheduling. I suggest you think very carefully about what kind of father you actually want to be. Because Emma will remember who was there when it mattered. And right now, that person is only me. Jessica walked toward the door, her head held high. She paused at the threshold, looking back at Brandon one final time. You told me I was replaceable, Brandon. You said anyone could have been your wife, but not anyone can be Emma's mother, and you cannot replace what you threw away. The door closed behind her, leaving Brandon sitting in stunned silence. Vanessa reached for his hand, but he pulled away, his eyes still fixed on the door where Jessica had disappeared. For the first time since starting his affair, Brandon Whitmore understood the magnitude of what he had lost, and the crushing weight of that realization left him breathless. The afternoon sunlight filtered through the tall windows of Jessica's apartment, casting warm patterns across the hardwood floors. It had been 3 weeks since the divorce hearing. 3 weeks since she had walked out of that conference room with her dignity intact and her daughter safe in her arms. The apartment was smaller than the mansion she had shared with Brandon, but it was hers. Every corner reflected her taste. From the cream-colored sofas to the bookshelves lined with novels. She had never had time to read during her marriage. Emma lay in her bassinet, making the soft gurgling sounds that had become the soundtrack of Jessica's new life. Being a single mother was exhausting in ways she had never imagined, but it was also deeply fulfilling. Every smile, every tiny milestone belonged entirely to her. There was no one to share the burden with, but there was also no one to diminish the joy. Jessica had taken a leave of absence from her marketing position at Hartwell & Associates. Her career had always been important to her, but Emma came first now. She had savings from her family inheritance, and the settlement was being finalized. Money was not the issue. Finding herself again, that was the real challenge. On this particular Thursday afternoon, Jessica decided she needed to leave the apartment. The walls, however lovely, were starting to feel confining. She bundled Emma into her carrier, grabbed her diaper bag, and headed to Cornerstone Books and Cafe, a cozy spot in the arts district that she had always loved. The bookstore smelled of coffee and old paper, a combination that instantly relaxed her. Jessica found a quiet corner table near the children's section and settled in with Emma's carrier beside her. She had just opened a novel when Emma began to fuss, her tiny face scrunching up in pre-cry mode. Jessica immediately reached for the bottle she had prepared. But Emma was working herself into a full tantrum. Other patrons glanced over, some with sympathy, others with mild annoyance. Jessica felt her cheeks flush as she tried to soothe her daughter, but Emma was having none of it. "May I help?" A deep, gentle voice came from beside her. Jessica looked up to find a man in his mid-30s standing there, concern evident in his warm brown eyes. He was tall with dark hair that fell slightly over his forehead, wearing jeans and a navy Henley that suggested casual confidence rather than calculated style. His face was kind, with smile lines that indicated he laughed often. "I have some experience with fussy babies," he continued, gesturing to the architectural magazine he had been reading. "My sister has 3. I've been the emergency backup more times than I can count." Jessica hesitated for only a moment before nodding. "She ate an hour ago, so I don't think she's hungry. I think she's just overwhelmed by the noise." The man glanced around the busy cafe and then at Emma's carrier. "Mind if I try something?" At Jessica's nod, he gently adjusted the carrier's canopy to block more of the overhead lights, then pulled out his phone. Soft white noise began playing, the kind that mimicked the sounds babies hear in the womb. Within seconds, Emma's cries began to subside. Within a minute, she was calm, her eyes drooping. Jessica stared in amazement. "How did you do that?" The man grinned, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "Like I said, emergency backup, uncle. I have an entire arsenal of baby calming techniques." He extended his hand. "I'm Ethan Caldwell." "Jessica Starling," she replied, shaking his hand. His grip was firm but not aggressive, warm and reassuring. "Would you mind if I joined you?" Ethan asked. "I was reading alone, and honestly, adult conversation sounds much better." Jessica found herself smiling, something she had not done genuinely in weeks. "I'd like that." Ethan retrieved his coffee and magazine, settling into the chair across from her. He was an architect, he explained, specializing in sustainable community housing. He had moved to the city 2 years ago from Seattle and was working on a project to convert an old warehouse district into affordable artist lofts. Jessica listened, genuinely interested. Ethan spoke with passion about his work, but without the ego that had characterized every conversation with Brandon. He asked about her career in marketing, and when she explained her current leave of absence, he nodded with understanding rather than judgment. "Being present for the early months is priceless," Ethan said, glancing at sleeping Emma. "My sister always says those first few months were the hardest but also the most important bonding time." "It's exhausting," Jessica admitted, surprised at her own honesty with this stranger. "But I wouldn't trade it for anything." We talked for 2 hours, the conversation flowing naturally from architecture to books to the best coffee shops in the city. Ethan made her laugh with stories about disastrous building inspections in his sister's chaotic household. He asked about Emma's name, and Jessica found herself explaining that it meant universal and whole, qualities she hoped her daughter would embody. When Emma began to fuss again, signaling genuine hunger this time, Jessica prepared to leave. "Would you like to meet here again?" Ethan asked, his tone hopeful but not pushy. "Same time next week? I'm usually here on Thursdays working on design sketches. The lighting is better than my office." Jessica surprised herself by immediately agreeing. "I'd like that." As she walked home, Emma fed and content in her carrier. Jessica felt something she had not felt in over a year. Hope. Not the desperate hope of saving a dying marriage, but the quiet hope of new possibilities, The following days brought harsh reality crashing back. The DNA test results arrived in a formal letter from Brandon's attorney. As expected, they confirmed with 99.9% certainty that Brandon Whitmore was Emma's biological father. But the letter did not stop there. Brandon was demanding immediate visitation rights, threatening legal action if Jessica did not comply with a custody arrangement that gave him Emma every other weekend and 2 evenings per week. Jessica's hand shook as she read the demands. This was not about Emma. This was about control, about Brandon's inability to accept that something existed beyond his authority. She called her attorney, Claire Bennett, a sharp woman in her 50s who had been Jessica's sorority sister and had become her fiercest advocate. "It's posturing," Claire said calmly over the phone. "His demands are unreasonable for an infant. No judge will give overnight visitation to a father who has shown zero involvement. We'll counter with supervised visitation, 2 hours weekly at your residence. Let him prove he can handle that before we discuss anything more." "He's going to fight this," Jessica said, her voice tight with stress. "Let him," Claire replied. "Every judge in this city knows Brandon Whitmore's reputation. Brilliant businessman, terrible human being. His affair was public, Jessica. His abandonment of you during pregnancy will not play well in family court." That evening, as Jessica rocked Emma to sleep, her phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Ethan. "Hope you and Emma are well. Looking forward to Thursday? If you need anything before then, I'm here." The simple message brought unexpected tears to Jessica's eyes. Kindness, without agenda, was so rare in her world. She texted back a thank you, and they fell into easy conversation about nothing important and everything that mattered. Ethan told her about a building collapse he had to design around. Jessica shared Emma's new fascination with her own hands. Thursday arrived, and Jessica found herself looking forward to it with an anticipation she had not felt in years. She dressed carefully, not to impress, but because she wanted to feel like herself again. Emma wore a tiny yellow outfit that made her look like a little sunbeam. Ethan was already at their corner table when they arrived.
"I'll 2 coffees waiting."
He had remembered exactly how she took hers. "I wasn't sure if you'd come," he admitted, his smile a bit shy. "I thought maybe I was being too forward last week." "You were perfectly forward," Jessica assured him, settling Emma's carrier. "This has become the highlight of my week." Over the next month, Thursdays became sacred. Jessica and Ethan met every week, their conversations deepening from pleasant small talk to genuine connection. Ethan shared about losing his father young and how it had shaped his approach to life, valuing presence over presence. Jessica opened up about her marriage, the loneliness of loving someone who saw her as an accessory rather than a partner. Ethan never rushed her, never pushed for more than she was ready to give. But he showed up consistently and genuinely. He brought Emma tiny board books. He learned her schedule and texted Jessica during known fussy times with encouragement. When Jessica mentioned struggling with a leaking sink, he showed up at her apartment with tools and fixed it without being asked twice. Meanwhile, Brandon's presence loomed like a storm cloud. He had agreed to supervise visitation under protest, and his first visit was scheduled for the following week. Jessica dreaded it, knowing that Brandon would approach fatherhood the same way he approached everything else, as a competition to win rather than a relationship to nurture. On their 5th Thursday meeting, as autumn leaves began to fall outside the bookstore windows, Ethan reached across the table and took Jessica's hand. "I know the timing is complicated," he said quietly. "I know you're dealing with your ex-husband and adjusting to being a mother and figuring out your life, but I need you to know something. These Thursdays have become the best part of my week. You have become the best part of my week. You and Emma both." Jessica's heart raced. She looked at their joined hands, then up at Ethan's sincere brown eyes. "I feel it too," she admitted. "But Ethan, my life is messy right now. Brandon is going to make everything difficult. I come with a lot of baggage. You come with a beautiful daughter and a strength that amazes me," Ethan corrected gently. "I'm not Brandon, Jessica. I'm not intimidated by your past or scared of your future. I'd like to be part of it if you'll let me." Jessica felt tears prick her eyes, but they were good tears, healing tears. "I'd like that too." Their first kiss happened 2 weeks later. After Brandon's disastrous first supervised visit, where he had spent more time on his phone than interacting with Emma, Jessica had been upset, and Ethan had come over with dinner and simply listened. As he prepared to leave, standing in her doorway, Jessica had reached up and kissed him softly. It was nothing like the passionate, consuming kisses of her early days with Brandon. This was gentle, patient, and full of promise. This was a kiss that said, "We have time, we'll figure this out together." As Ethan left that night, Jessica closed the door and leaned against it, smiling. Emma cooed from her nearby playmat, and Jessica picked her up, spinning her gently. "We're going to be okay, baby girl," she whispered. "We're going to be more than okay." But outside her apartment building, in a black sedan parked across the street, Brandon Whitmore sat watching her windows. He had seen Ethan arrive with dinner, had seen the intimate way Jessica smiled at him through the glass. Brandon's hands clenched the steering wheel. He had lost Jessica, but he would not lose his daughter. And he certainly would not let some nobody architect take his place. The war was just beginning. Winter arrived in the city with a vengeance, coating everything in pristine white snow that made the world look clean and new. But inside the courthouse on Maple Street, the atmosphere was anything but pure. The family court hearing room was decorated in neutral tones designed to feel calm, but the tension crackling between the opposing parties could have powered the entire building. Jessica sat beside Claire Bennett, her attorney, with Ethan on her other side. His presence was a steady anchor in the storm. Emma, now 6 months old, was with a trusted babysitter. Spared from witnessing this battle over her future, across the aisle, Brandon sat with his legal team. 3 of the most expensive family law attorneys money could buy. Vanessa was notably absent. According to gossip that had reached Jessica through mutual acquaintances, the relationship had crumbled under the weight of Brandon's obsession with reclaiming his family. Vanessa had wanted a carefree billionaire boyfriend, not a man consumed with his ex-wife and baby. Judge Patricia Morrison entered, and everyone rose. She was a woman in her early 60s with silver hair pulled back in a severe bun and eyes that had seen every manipulation tactic in the book. She was known for being fair, but uncompromising when it came to children's welfare. "Be seated," Judge Morrison said, settling behind her bench and opening the case file. "We're here today regarding custody arrangements for Emma Rose Starling, 6 months old, biological daughter of Jessica Starling and Brandon Whitmore. Mr. Whitmore is petitioning for joint physical custody with a 50-50 split. Ms. Starling is requesting to maintain primary physical custody with supervised visitation for Mr. Whitmore. Let's begin." Brandon's lead attorney, a man named Gregory Hines, with silver temples and an expensive suit, stood first. "Your Honor, my client is a successful entrepreneur who can provide Emma with every advantage. He has undergone the paternity test, attended the supervised visitations as required, and is prepared to be a full and active father. Denying him equal custody based on the circumstances of his divorce is punitive rather than being in the child's best interest." Judge Morrison looked unimpressed. "Mr. Hines, I've read the file. Your client filed for divorce when Ms. Starling was approximately 2 months pregnant, correct?" "That's correct, Your Honor, but he was unaware of the pregnancy, because he didn't ask." Judge Morrison said dryly. "Continue." Hines called Brandon to the stand. Under oath, Brandon presented himself as a reformed man who had made mistakes, but was ready to be the father Emma deserved. He spoke about the nursery he had prepared in his penthouse, the nanny he had hired, the trust fund he had established. "Mr. Whitmore," Judge Morrison interrupted during his testimony, "what is Emma's current sleep schedule?" Brandon blinked. "I believe she sleeps through the night now." "You believe or you know?" "I know," Brandon corrected, though his uncertainty was evident. "What time does she typically go to bed?" Brandon hesitated. "Around 7 or 8 in the evening." "What is her favorite toy?" Another pause. "She has many toys. She's a baby. They don't really have favorites yet." "What foods has she started eating?" "She's still on formula, I believe." "You believe?" Judge Morrison's tone sharpened. "Mr. Whitmore, these supervised visits have been happening for 2 months, twice weekly, 2 hours each. And you don't know if your daughter is on solid foods yet? Brandon's jaw tightened. I've been focused on bonding with her. The details can be learned. The details are the bonding, Mr. Whitmore, Judge Morrison said. Step down. Claire stood for the defense. Your Honor, I'd like to call Jessica Starling. Jessica took the stand, her hands steady despite her racing heart. Claire walked her through Emma's daily routine with precision. Jessica knew every detail, from Emma's favorite lullaby to her emerging preference for sweet potatoes over carrots. From her hatred of having her face wiped to her delight in peekaboo. Miss Starling, Claire asked, what is your concern about joint custody? Jessica looked directly at Judge Morrison. My concern isn't that Brandon will harm Emma physically. It's that he sees her as a possession to win rather than a person to love. In 2 months of supervised visits, he has canceled 4 times due to business meetings. He spends much of the visit time on his phone. He brings expensive toys, but doesn't know how to play with her. Emma cries when he holds her because she doesn't feel safe with him. It's because you've poisoned her against me, Brandon shouted from his seat. Judge Morrison's gavel cracked down hard. Mr. Whitmore, another outburst, and you'll be in contempt. Sit down, Claire then called Ethan to the stand. Brandon's attorney objected immediately. Your Honor, this man has no legal standing in this case. He's a material witness to the child's daily life and well-being, Claire countered. The court has discretion to hear testimony from anyone with relevant information. I'll allow it, Judge Morrison decided. But keep it relevant, Ms. Bennett. Ethan took the stand, and Jessica felt her heart swell with love and gratitude. He looked calm and honest, his brown eyes steady. Mr. Caldwell, Claire began, how long have you known Jessica and Emma? 5 months. We met by chance at a bookstore when Emma was a month old. And what is your relationship with them? I'm in love with Jessica, Ethan said simply, his eyes finding hers across the courtroom. And I love Emma as if she were my own daughter. Objection, Hines called. This is irrelevant, emotional testimony. Your Honor, Claire said calmly. Mr. Whitmore's petition argues that Emma needs a stable-to-parent household. I'm establishing that she already has one. Judge Morrison nodded. Overruled. Continue. Caldwell, can you describe Emma's typical evening routine? Ethan smiled softly. Bath time is at 6:30. She loves the water but hates getting her hair washed, so we save that for last. After bath, she has a bottle, usually 6 ounces, now that she's eating more solids during the day. Then we read her 3 books. Right now, her favorites are Goodnight Moon, The Very Hungry Caterpillar, and a touch-on-feel book about farm animals. She goes down around 7:15, and if she's teething, we give her a cold washcloth to chew on. The specificity was damning. Here was a man with no biological connection to Emma, who knew her better in 5 months than her own father had learned in 2. Do you wish to adopt Emma, Mr. Caldwell? Claire asked. If Jessica agrees, and if it's what's best for Emma, I would be honored to, Ethan answered. But Emma has a biological father. I'm not trying to replace him. I'm just trying to be there for her and for the woman I love. Brandon's attorney declined to cross-examine, perhaps recognizing that any questions would only make the contrast more stark. Judge Morrison called for closing arguments. Hines emphasized Brandon's financial resources and legal rights. Claire focused on Emma's emotional needs and stability. Then Judge Morrison delivered her ruling. I've presided over hundreds of custody cases, she began, and I've learned that children don't need the most money or the biggest houses. They need consistency, love, and parents who put their needs first. Mr. Whitmore, your rights as a biological father are protected by law. But those rights come with responsibilities you have not demonstrated the ability or willingness to fulfill. Brandon's face reddened, but he remained silent. Primary physical custody is awarded to Ms. Starling. Mr. Whitmore, your visitation will remain supervised for the next 6 months. After that period, we will reassess. If you demonstrate consistent presence and genuine engagement, unsupervised visitation may be considered. Joint custody is denied. However, I encourage you to be the father your daughter deserves rather than the one you think looks good in photographs. The gavel came down, final and absolute. Outside the courthouse, Brandon caught up with Jessica on the steps. Ethan moved protectively closer, but Jessica touched his arm gently, indicating she could handle this. "You won," Brandon said bitterly. "Are you happy now? You took my daughter from me." Jessica looked at him with something close to pity. "I didn't take her, Brandon. You gave her away the day you chose Vanessa over our family. Emma was never the prize in our divorce. She's a little girl who deserves parents who actually want to be parents. The door is open for you to be her father, a real father, not just a name on a check. But you have to do the work. And him." Brandon jerked his chin toward Ethan. "You're just going to let some random guy play daddy to my kid?" "That random guy knows her favorite stuffed animal's name. That random guy wakes up at 2 in the morning when she's teething and walks her around the apartment singing off-key lullabies. That random guy sees her as a blessing, not a burden. So yes, Brandon, I'm going to build a life with a man who actually shows up." She turned away, taking Ethan's offered hand, and walked down the courthouse steps without looking back. 6 months later. On a warm spring afternoon, Jessica and Ethan were married in a small garden ceremony. Emma, now 1 year old, toddled down the aisle in a white dress, held carefully by Claire Bennett. The guest list was intimate, just close friends and family who had supported them through the storm. When the officiant asked if anyone objected to the union, Jessica held her breath for just a moment, half expecting Brandon to appear. But there was only supportive silence. Brandon had continued his supervised visits, though sporadically. He sent child support and expensive gifts, but remained emotionally distant. Emma knew him as the man who sometimes visited, but when she said her first word at 10 months old, it had been "Dada," while looking at Ethan. As Jessica and Ethan exchanged rings, Emma played with the flower petals at their feet, oblivious to the significance of the moment, but central to it nonetheless. "I promise to love you and Emma for all of my days," Ethan vowed, his voice thick with emotion. "I promise to be present, to be patient, and to build a home filled with laughter and love. I promise to trust again, to love without fear, and to build a future worthy of our daughter," Jessica replied, tears streaming down her smiling face. When they kissed, their friends and family erupted in applause. Emma looked up at the noise and clapped her chubby hands together. Giggling with delight, the reception was held in Jessica's apartment building's rooftop garden. As the sun set over the city, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Jessica stood with Emma on her hip and Ethan's arm around her waist. "Happy?" Ethan asked softly. "Happier than I ever thought possible," Jessica answered honestly. "Thank you for seeing us, really seeing us, when we needed it most." "Thank you for letting me in," Ethan replied. Kissing her temple, Emma reached for both of them, her small hands patting their cheeks, and they laughed, the sound of a real family, chosen and cherished across the city in his empty penthouse. Brandon stood at his floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the same sunset. He held a photo of Emma taken during one of his visits, her face uncertain as he held her. He had built an empire, but lost a family. He had chased desire, but abandoned love. And now, even with all his billions, he was utterly and completely alone. The lesson came too late, but it came with crystal clarity. Some things, once broken, cannot be bought back. Some chances, once missed, never return. And as the sun disappeared below the horizon, Brandon Whitmore finally understood the true cost of his choices. Meanwhile, on that rooftop garden, Jessica danced with her daughter and her husband under string lights that twinkled like stars. The past was behind them. The future stretched ahead, bright and full of promise. And the present was exactly where they belonged, together. Thank you for taking 30 time to listen to this story. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to click like, share this story with your friends and family, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more meaningful stories. Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to life-changing true stories today. Alina. Carter had worked at the Riverside Grand Hotel for 3 years, climbing from a front desk associate to senior concierge, and she loved every minute of it. The elegant lobby, with its marble floors and crystal chandeliers, the interesting guests from around the world, the satisfaction of solving problems and making people's stays memorable. At 27, with long auburn hair she usually wore in a professional bun and green eyes that sparkled when she smiled, Alina had built a reputation as the person who could handle anything, everything. Changed on a Tuesday morning in September when the hotel was sold to Bennett Hospitality Group. The staff had been nervous for weeks, wondering what changes the new ownership would bring, whether their jobs were safe, whether the culture they loved would survive. The previous owner, Mr. Harrison, had been kind and fair, treating employees like family. Would the new owner be the same? Alina got her answer when Christopher Bennett walked through the lobby doors at exactly 9 in the morning. She was standing behind the concierge desk, helping a guest arrange theater tickets, when the entire atmosphere in the room shifted. Conversations quieted. Heads turned. Even the air seemed to still. He was tall, easily 6'3", with dark hair styled in that effortlessly perfect way that probably took deliberate effort, sharp blue eyes that seemed to take in everything at once, and a presence that commanded attention without demanding it. He wore a charcoal gray suit that fit him so perfectly it had to be custom-made, and when he smiled at the doorman who greeted him, Alina felt her stomach do a little flip. Christopher Bennett was not what she had expected. She had imagined someone older, maybe in his 50s, probably stern and businesslike. Instead, he looked to be in his mid-30s, and when those blue eyes swept across the lobby and landed briefly on her, she forgot what she was saying to the guest. The next few hours were a whirlwind. Christopher met with department heads, toured the property, asked questions that showed he actually understood the hospitality business, not just the financial side of it. He was polite to everyone, remembered names after hearing them once, and by lunchtime, the nervous energy among the staff had shifted to cautious optimism. Alina managed to avoid direct interaction with him that first day, though she felt his gaze on her more than once. It was unnerving and thrilling at the same time. It was the following day, during her lunch break, that everything went sideways in the most spectacular way possible. Alina had gone to the small staff lounge on the second floor, a cozy room with a few tables, a kitchenette, and most importantly, privacy from guests. She pulled out her phone to call her best friend Jessica, who had been demanding details about the new owner since Alina had texted her the night before. She set the phone on speaker so she could eat her salad while talking. Placing it on the table in front of her, Jessica answered on the second ring. Finally, tell me everything. Is he really as gorgeous as the photos online? Alina laughed, glancing around to make sure she was alone. The lounge was empty. The photos do not do him justice. Jess, this man is unreal. Describe him. I want details. Okay. Alina speared a cherry tomato, grinning. First of all, he's tall. Really tall? I'm 5'7", and he makes me feel tiny. Dark hair, perfectly styled, but not in a trying too hard way. And his eyes, they're this incredible shade of blue, like the ocean on a clear day. Stop. I'm swooning already. The suit he was wearing yesterday probably cost more than my car. It fit him like it was painted on. Broad shoulders, slim waist, and when he walked, God, it was like watching poetry in motion. He moves with this confidence that's not arrogant, just completely sure of himself. Is he single? Jessica asked eagerly. I have no idea, but there was no wedding ring. I checked. Multiple times. Alina felt her cheeks heat, even though no one could see her. In his voice, Jess, it's deep and smooth like honey and whiskey mixed together. When he says thank you, which he does to everyone, it sounds genuine. Not like those executives who say it, but clearly don't mean it. You've got it bad. I know. It's ridiculous. He's a billionaire hotel mogul, and I'm a concierge. We exist in completely different universes. But there's something about him. He smiled at one of the housekeepers this morning, this real, genuine smile, and asked her how long she'd been with the hotel. He actually cared about the answer, so he's hot and nice. Marry him, Lena laughed. Right? Because that's how the world works. I'm sure he dates supermodels and socialites. I'm just the help. Don't sell yourself short. You're amazing. I'm realistic. but I can admire from a distance. And what I'm admiring is a man who looks like he was carved by angels. His jaw could cut glass. His hands are these perfect, strong hands that made me wonder what they'd feel like on my skin. And don't even get me started on his mouth. Please get started on his mouth. Full lips, perfectly shaped, and when he smiles, he has this little dimple on his left cheek that transforms his whole face. I spent way too much time yesterday imagining what it would be like to kiss him. Alina Carter, are you fantasizing about your boss? He's not technically my boss. He owns the hotel, but he's not my direct supervisor. Lena knew this was a weak defense. And yes, absolutely I am. The man is walking temptation. If you could see the way he fills out that suit, the way his shoulders strain against the fabric just slightly when he moves. I nearly walked into a column watching him cross the lobby. This is amazing. What are you going to do about it? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I'm going to be professional, do my job, and admire him from afar, like a normal person with a hopeless crush on someone completely unattainable. So boring, so smart. The last thing I need is to make things awkward at work over some fantasy that will never happen. But what if it could happen? Jessica pressed. It won't. Men like Christopher Bennett don't notice women like me. We're in different worlds. I'll get over it. Even as she said it, Alina wasn't sure she believed it. There was something about him that went beyond just physical attraction. The way he'd listened intently to the head housekeeper's concerns, the way he'd complimented the chef on the breakfast service, the way his eyes had seemed to see everything and everyone. Well, I think you should at least try to talk to him and say what? Hi, I think you're gorgeous, and I've been imagining your hands on me. That'll go well. Jessica was laughing so hard. Alina could barely understand her response. Maybe not exactly that. I'll stick with good morning. Mr. Bennett, and how may I assist you today? Which is professional and appropriate and definitely does not involve me telling him that I think he's the most attractive man I've ever seen in my entire life. You're no fun? I'm employed and would. I'd like to stay that way. We chatted for a few more minutes. About other things before Jessica had to go. Alina ended the call, smiling to herself as she finished her salad. It had felt good to get all that off her chest. Even if nothing would ever come of it, she was throwing away her trash when she heard a voice behind her. Deep and amused and absolutely horrifying in its familiarity. Walking temptation and hands you've been imagining on your skin? That's quite the review. Alina spun around so fast, she nearly lost her balance. Christopher Bennett stood in the doorway of the staff lounge, leaning against the frame with his arms crossed over his chest, and the smile on his face was equal parts amused and something darker. Something that made heat pool in her stomach. How long have you been standing there? The words came out as barely a whisper. Long enough. He pushed off the doorframe and walked into the room, each step deliberate and measured. Long enough to hear about my eyes being like the ocean, my jaw cutting glass, and your very detailed analysis of how I fill out a suit. Alina wanted to die. Wanted the floor to open up and swallow her whole. Her face was burning so hot she was surprised she hadn't spontaneously combusted. I can explain, please do. He stopped a few feet away, close enough that she could smell his cologne. Something expensive and woodsy that made her head spin. I'm very interested in hearing the explanation for why you think my mouth is perfectly shaped. Lena opened her mouth, then closed it, then opened it again. No words came out. Her brain had completely short-circuited. Christopher Bennett, billionaire hotel owner, the man she had just spent 15 minutes describing in embarrassing detail to her best friend, had heard everything. Double quotes I ... She started, then stopped. What could she possibly say? Sorry I objectified you. Sorry I think you're the most attractive man alive. Sorry, I have functioning eyes. Christopher's smile widened, and that dimple she had mentioned appeared, making everything so much worse. You checked for a wedding ring? Multiple times? This is a nightmare, Alina muttered, covering her face with her hands. This cannot be happening. I have to say, his voice was closer now, in 3 years of owning hotels. I've never gotten quite such a thorough review. The part about my hands was particularly interesting. Lena peeked through her fingers. He was standing right in front of her now, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. Those ocean blue eyes that were currently sparkling with amusement and something else, something that made her heart race. "I'm so sorry," she managed. "That was completely unprofessional. I never meant for you to hear any of that. I thought I was alone. Don't apologize." His voice dropped lower, more serious. "Do you know how refreshing it is to have someone see me as just a man, not a bank account or a business opportunity? You weren't trying to impress me or manipulate me. You were just being honest with your friend. Honest and wildly inappropriate. Honest and flattering." He reached up, gently pulling her hands away from her face. The touch of his fingers on her wrists sent electricity shooting up her arms. "Alina Carter, right? Senior concierge. Been here 3 years. Has a perfect track record of guest satisfaction, speaks 3 languages, and apparently thinks I'm walking temptation. You know my name?" It came out breathless. "I know all my employees' names, but yours I made sure to remember first." He let go of her wrists, but didn't step back. "I noticed you yesterday. The way you handled that difficult guest who was upset about his room. How you solved the problem without making him feel like he was being difficult. The way you smile at people when you greet them, like you're genuinely happy to see them. I wanted to introduce myself, but I got pulled into meetings." Elena's heart was thundering in her chest. "You noticed me? How could I not? You light up the entire lobby." His eyes searched hers. "I came looking for you today, actually. Was going to find some excuse to talk to you. Then I heard my name as I walked past the lounge, and curiosity got the better of me. So you just stood there listening? I was going to interrupt, but then you started the part about my shoulders, and I got curious about where it was going." That smile again, devastating and playful. "I'm glad I waited." The review just kept getting better. Despite her embarrassment, Alina felt a laugh bubbling up. "This is insane. This whole situation is insane." "Probably," Christopher agreed. "But here's what I'm thinking. You find me attractive? I find you captivating. We're both adults. What if we did something about it?" Elena's breath caught. "What are you suggesting?" "Dinner. Tonight. Not as owner and employee. Just as Christopher and Alina, 2 people who are clearly interested in each other. I don't think that's a good idea." Even as she said it, everything in her was screaming to say yes. "You own the hotel. I work here. That's a power imbalance. People will talk. Let them talk." He stepped even closer, and now she could feel the heat radiating from his body. "I don't care what people think. I care about the woman who thinks my eyes are like the ocean and wants to know what my hands feel like on her skin. So I'm asking Alina. Dinner." She should say no. It was the smart thing, the professional thing. But when she looked into his eyes and saw the genuine interest there, the attraction that clearly went both ways, she found herself nodding. "Yes, okay. Dinner." The smile that broke across his face was radiant. 7 tonight. I'll pick you up. Write down your address for me." And that was how Alina Carter started the most thrilling and terrifying chapter of her life. Dinner turned into drinks. Drinks turned into a walk along the river. 1 date became 2, then 3. They tried to be discreet at first, meeting away from the hotel, keeping their interactions at work strictly professional. But hiding something that intense was like trying to hold back the tide. It started with looks that lasted too long. Christopher would come down to the lobby, and his eyes would find Alina automatically, a small smile playing at his lips. She would feel his gaze on her throughout the day, warm and constant. When he passed the concierge desk, their fingers would brush as he took a message. Contact that looked accidental, but was entirely deliberate. Then came the stolen moments. Christopher would call Alina to his office to discuss guest feedback. They would end up kissing against his desk. His hands finally on her skin the way she had imagined, better than she had imagined. She would deliver papers to the executive floor and find herself pressed against the wall of an empty conference room. His mouth on her neck, her fingers tangled in his hair. They talked for hours. Late at night in the hotel bar after it closed, sharing dreams and fears and stories, Christopher told her about the pressure of living up to his father's legacy, about building his own empire and the loneliness that came with it. Alina opened up about losing her mother young, about working her way through college, about her dreams of eventually opening her own boutique hotel someday. "You should," Christopher said one night, his thumb tracing circles on the back of her hand. "You'd be amazing at it. You have the vision, the dedication, the heart for it." "Maybe someday," Alina replied, leaning into him. "For now, I'm happy where I am." Because where she was falling completely in love with him. 3 weeks into their secret relationship, reality came crashing down. Alina was in the supply room, checking inventory, when she heard her name being whispered. She peeked around the corner and saw 2 housekeepers looking at a phone, their expressions shocked. "I can't believe it," one was saying. "The Ice King and the concierge. Who would have thought?" Elena's stomach dropped. She walked over, trying to keep her voice steady. "What are you looking at?" They jumped, guilt flashing across their faces. One of them, Maria, hesitantly showed her the phone. It was a photo, grainy but unmistakable. Alina and Christopher in the parking garage 2 nights ago. His hands cupping her face, kissing her like she was oxygen and he was drowning. Someone had taken it through the gap between cars. And judging by the notification counter, it had been shared in the staff group chat and seen by over 50 people. "Lena, we didn't know you 2 were together," Maria said gently. "Are you okay? Is he treating you right?" But Alina barely heard her. Her ears were ringing. Everyone knew. Everyone had seen. All the discretion, all the careful planning, shattered by one photo. Her phone buzzed. A text from Christopher. "My office. Now." She found him pacing behind his desk, jaw tight, the photo pulled up on his computer screen. "Who took this?" "I don't know." "Does it matter?" Alina sank into a chair, her legs suddenly weak. "Everyone's seen it. They're all talking about us. Let them talk." He came around the desk, kneeling in front of her. "Alina, look at me. I don't care who knows. I don't care what they say. But I do." The words burst out of her. "They're going to think I'm sleeping with you to get ahead, that I'm using you. They'll say, I'm just some gold digger who seduced the boss. Anyone who knows you won't think that. You don't understand. You're the owner. Your reputation is untouchable. But me? I'm just an employee. This could ruin my career. No one will ever take me seriously again." Before Christopher could respond, his assistant knocked on the door. "Mr. Bennett and Miss Carter, the HR director, needs to see both of you. Immediately." The meeting was worse than Alina had imagined. Diane Foster, the HR director, sat across from them with a grave expression. "I'm going to be direct. A relationship between the hotel owner and an employee creates serious concerns. Liability issues, potential favoritism, workplace morale problems. There are no policies against workplace relationships," Christopher said coolly. "Not officially, no. But we need to address this properly." Diane looked at Alina sympathetically. "Miss Carter, do you feel you've been pressured or coerced in any way?" "No," Alina said immediately. "Christopher has never used his position inappropriately. Everything between us has been completely mutual." "That may be, but perception matters. Staff members are already raising concerns about preferential treatment." "I haven't received any special treatment," Alina protested. "Haven't you?" Diane pulled out a file. "You were given the premium guest accounts 2 weeks ago. You received a significant raise last week. You were moved to the executive floor coordination project." Elena's face went pale. She turned to Christopher. "You did those things?" "You deserved all of them," he said firmly. "Your performance reviews were outstanding. The raises were scheduled before we even met. The project assignment was based on merit. But now everyone will think it's because we're together." Alina felt tears threatening. "They'll never believe I earned any of it. The optics are problematic," Diane agreed. "I'm not suggesting you end your relationship. That's your choice. But we need to establish clear boundaries and possibly consider reassignment to avoid any appearance of impropriety." "Reassignment?" Christopher's voice went cold. "Absolutely not, Mr. Bennett. It's the most ethical solution." He stood abruptly. "No, here's what's going to happen. Alina Carter is one of the best employees this hotel has. Every single recognition she's received has been earned through her exceptional work. I will not allow her career to be damaged because we're in a relationship. Christopher Alina started, but he held up a hand. I'm in love with her. The words rang out in the quiet office, bold and certain. I'm in love with Alina Carter, and I'm not hiding it anymore. If that makes people uncomfortable, that's their problem, not ours. She stays in her position. She keeps her assignments. And anyone who has a problem with our relationship can bring it directly to me. Anne sighed. Very well. But I'm documenting this conversation, and you both need to sign acknowledgement forms about workplace relationship policies. As they left the office, Alina grabbed Christopher's arm. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. He turned to face her, his hands gentle on her shoulders. I meant what I said. I love you, Alina. And I'm done hiding it. I love you too, she whispered. But I'm scared. Don't be. He pulled her close, right there in the hallway where anyone could see. We face this together. I promise you, no one is going to make you feel less than the incredible woman you are. Not while I'm here. And when he kissed her, slow and tender and full of promise, Lena believed him. The next few weeks tested Alina and Christopher in ways neither had anticipated. True to his word, Christopher made no effort to hide their relationship. He would stop by the concierge desk openly, bring her coffee during her shift, and take her to lunch in the hotel restaurant where everyone could see. At first, the attention was overwhelming. Some staff members were supportive. Maria and several other housekeepers became Elena's fiercest defenders, shutting down gossip whenever they heard it. The head chef, Roberto, started sending special desserts to her, stationed with notes that said things like, for our favorite concierge, and don't let the haters get you down. Jessica visited the hotel just to give Christopher her best friend approval, which she apparently passed with flying colors, but others were less kind. A few of the front desk associates started giving Alina the cold shoulder, whispering when she walked by. One of the assistant managers made a snide comment about sleeping your way to the top within Elena's earshot. The comment made it back to Christopher within hours. Alina arrived at work the next morning to find that the assistant manager had been transferred to another Bennett property across the state. Christopher's message was clear: disrespect Alina, and there would be consequences. You can't keep doing that. Alina told him in his office that afternoon, though secretly she was touched by his protectiveness. You can't punish everyone who says something mean about us.
Catch me.
His jaw was set in that stubborn way she was learning meant he wouldn't budge. I won't tolerate anyone undermining you or making you uncomfortable in your own workplace. People need to see that I'm good at my job, independent of you. They will see it. Because you are. He pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her forehead. But that doesn't mean I have to let them disrespect you in the meantime. Lena proved her worth in the most unexpected way possible. It was a Friday afternoon in early November when everything went wrong at once. A plumbing disaster on the third floor displaced 30 guests. A wedding party of 200 arrived early, and their ballroom wasn't ready. The computer system crashed, wiping out half the reservations. And to top it all off, a prominent food critic showed up unannounced for dinner. The hotel descended into controlled chaos. Christopher was in emergency meetings with maintenance and IT. The event coordinator was on the verge of tears. The front desk was overwhelmed with angry guests demanding answers. Alina looked at the crisis unfolding around her and made a decision. She took charge. She coordinated with housekeeping to prepare rooms on the 4th floor for the displaced guests, personally escorting each family and offering complimentary room service to make up for the inconvenience. She called in favors with a nearby boutique hotel to accommodate overflow guests, ensuring they received the same level of service. She rallied the front desk staff, creating a system to manually track reservations until IT got the computers back online. For the wedding party, she transformed a problem into an opportunity. She arranged for the bride and her party to have champagne in the spa while they waited. Turned the delay into an extended cocktail hour with premium appetizers, and personally oversaw every detail to ensure the reception went flawlessly. And when the food critic sat down in the restaurant, Alina made sure Roberto knew, briefed the servers, and ensured the critic received the best possible experience. By the time Cristono emerged from his meeting 6 hours later, the crisis had been resolved. Guests were settled and happy. The wedding was a triumph, the bride already posting glowing reviews on social media. The computer system was restored, and the food critic had left with a smile. Promising a positive review, Christopher found Alina at the concierge desk, looking exhausted but satisfied, fielding a call from a grateful guest. When she hung up, he just stared at her. "What did you do?" "My job," she said simply. "Lena, I just got calls from 3 different department heads telling me you single-handedly saved today from being a complete disaster. The wedding coordinator said you were a miracle worker. Roberto wants to name a dish after you." She smiled tiredly. "I just did what needed to be done." Came around the desk and pulled her into his arms, not caring who saw. "You're incredible." "Do you know that?" "Absolutely incredible." That night, after her shift ended, Christopher took her up to the rooftop garden, a space usually reserved for private events. It had been transformed with string lights and candles, a table set for 2 overlooking the city. "What is this?" Alina asked, though her heart was already racing. "A celebration? Of you. Of us. Of the fact that everyone in this building now knows, without a doubt, that you're not with me because of my money or my position. You're with me because we belong together." They had dinner under the stars, talking and laughing, the stress of the day melting away. When dessert arrived, Lena noticed something glinting on top of the chocolate mousse. A ring. She looked up to find Christopher kneeling beside her chair, the city lights creating a halo behind him. "Lena Carter," he began, and his voice was thick with emotion. 6 weeks ago, you left your phone on speaker and accidentally told your best friend that you thought I was walking temptation with hands you wanted to feel on your skin. Best accidental confession I've ever heard." She laughed through tears that were already falling. "You've turned my world upside down in the best possible way. You make me laugh. You challenge me. You make me want to be better. Today, watching you handle that crisis with grace and competence and pure heart, I fell in love with you all over again." He took the ring from the dessert, wiping off a bit of chocolate. "I don't want to spend another day without you as my partner in every sense of the word. Will you marry me?" "Yes." The word burst out of her before he even finished the question. "Yes, absolutely yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger, a stunning emerald surrounded by diamonds, and kissed her as the city sparkled below them. When they finally pulled apart, Alina was crying and laughing at the same time. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you so much. I love you too." He wiped away her tears with his thumbs. "My perfect, capable, extraordinary Alina." They were married 4 months later in the hotel's grand ballroom, the same space where Alina had saved that chaotic wedding. The entire staff was invited, and even the people who had been skeptical of their relationship came around when they saw how happy Christopher and Alina made each other. Jessica was the maid of honor, of course, and gave a speech about how her best friend had accidentally left a phone on speaker and found true love. The room erupted in laughter and applause. Roberto created a special menu for the reception. Maria and the housekeeping staff decorated with flowers they had chosen themselves. Even Diane from HR was there, smiling and admitting that sometimes workplace romances did work out perfectly, as Alina and Christopher had their first dance. She thought about how far they had come from that mortifying day in the staff lounge, how a moment of embarrassment had turned into the greatest love of her life. "What are you thinking about?" Christopher murmured against her hair. "I'm glad I forgot to turn off the speaker." He laughed, the sound rumbling through his chest. "Best technical malfunction ever. What about you? Any regrets about eavesdropping on that conversation?" "My only regret," he said, pulling back to look into her eyes, "is that I didn't record it. I'd love to play it at our anniversary parties. Walking temptation. Jaw that could cut glass. Hands you wanted to feel on your skin." Alina buried her burning face in his shoulder. "You're never going to let me forget that, are you?" "Never," he promised, kissing the top of her head. "It's my favorite story. The day the woman I loved told the truth without knowing I was listening, and I realized I'd found something real." A year later, Christopher helped Alina open her own boutique hotel. a small luxury property she named the Carter House. He was her partner and investor. But everyone knew it was her vision, her heart, her dream brought to life. The hotel won awards for service and design, and Elena's reputation in the industry grew on its own merit. They had 2 children, a daughter named Grace and a son named Thomas, both of whom grew up running through hotel lobbies and charming guests from the moment. They could talk, and every year on their anniversary, Christopher would play the recording he had secretly made on his phone that day in the staff lounge. Elena's voice describing him in embarrassing detail. While he stood in the doorway falling in love, she would protest and blush and threaten to delete it. And he would pull her close and remind her that it was the moment everything changed, the moment their story really began. Because sometimes the best love stories start with accidental confessions and overheard truths, with embarrassment that turns to laughter, with taking a chance on someone who sees you for exactly who you are, and sometimes walking temptation with a jaw that could cut glass turns out to be the love of your life, if you're brave enough to say yes when he asks you to dinner, honest enough to face the challenges together, and lucky enough to find someone who loves your honest, unfiltered truth. Elena and Christopher Bennett lived happily ever after. Their love story beginning with a phone left on speaker and continuing for the rest of their lives. Proof that the best things in life often happen when you least expect them, in the most wonderfully awkward ways possible. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this story. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to click like. Share this story with your friends and family, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more meaningful stories.